Thanks, Holly, for joining me today. Do you want to start by telling us a bit about who you are and your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm Holly. When I was younger, I was a child actress, and I started when I was 5. My first ever job was a Play-Doh advert. And then I got to do some really nice things like Nanny McPhee and Tracey Beaker. And I carried on acting for quite a while. And as I got a bit older, it was a combination of the industry being really hard and me not being as interested. I ended up going to art school and I did a BA in sculpture. Well, I did fine art, but I specialised in sculpture at St Martin's, which is an art school in London. And I graduated, I think, nearly 4 years ago, which is really scary and disgusting. But since then, I work in art. I'm a freelance producer, but I also have a podcast. I actually don't call it a podcast. I call it a YouTube series, but I guess it kind of is a podcast. To me, it doesn't feel like a podcast, but I guess it's a podcast. But yeah, it's a YouTube series called From Early, and the premise is that I interview other people who started their careers as children. And I'm trying to grow it, and it's quite new, but it's all really exciting.
What was the motivation to start that transition into podcasting and into talking to other childhood actors?
It was sort of a combination of things. When it was COVID, I made a TikTok account for fun, like everybody else did. And I started posting just some videos of like saying that I'd been in Tracey Beaker and Nanny McPhee. And I think it was like my third video just went crazy. And all of a sudden, all these people were commenting like, oh my God, I remember you. So I just kept making them and I didn't really think anything of it. And then I was away with my family. We like gone for a staycation somewhere. And I had this like light bulb moment. And I was like, oh, what if I like did something with this? Because I hadn't had that much of an interest in acting while I was at art school. I was like really committed to being an artist. And there's this like ongoing thing throughout my life that I just like change what I want to do every 3 years. And then I'm really committed to it. And then I completely get rid of it. But during COVID, I'd started to think more about getting back into acting. And then I just had this idea, and I think that for me, like having a background in performing and also having a background in art and having quite a natural affinity of wanting to talk to people and understand people, presenting felt quite natural. And I just had the idea. I was like, okay, like let's see how it goes. I came up with the name. It all kind of happened in one day. And I messaged Jack Edwards, who played Mark on Tracy, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then we just recorded the first episode. But yeah, it was. I just think it was quite a natural thing, and I think that also seeing people's response to my TikTok made me feel like there was an audience for this kind of content, and I hadn't seen anybody else doing it. So I thought, why don't I try?
Do you think some of it was also a personal motivation for you? Because earlier you spoke about the impact that acting had on you growing up. Do you think you wanted to learn about the experience of other people?
100%. 100%. That's what people ask me. They're like, oh, somebody said I started working with a new videographer on my most recent episode. And when we were speaking, she said, like, who's this for? And I said, well, it's kind of for me. Like, it is for other people, for them to, you know, like learn about people that they watched when they were children and see what they're doing now. But a lot of it is for me to see how different people experience something. But I also am really keen to not just do child actors. It's what I've done so far, because as you probably know, when you begin, you have to kind of work with your connections and everything that you've got, and getting somebody to talk to you when you're growing and small is really hard. But I have bigger ambitions to branch out. I really want to talk to musicians, really want to talk to athletes. Somebody suggested like pageant stars, which I thought would be so interesting. I think there's so many different types of people who started things when they were young. So I really want it to be a kind of like open thing, when it's not just actors, but it's for all types of people.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced kind of being a childhood actor?
See, I don't think I had challenges from being a child actor, because I think I did some nice work, but it wasn't like, I was famous or I can live a normal life or I was like pulled out of school. I didn't have those experiences. I think that the difficulty that I've had in my life has been from like not being as successful as I wanted to be. And that's where any kind of like internal struggle with it has come from. I think when I was young, it was like all I cared about and it was all I ever wanted to do. And that did change as I got a bit older. Like I just wasn't as driven by it anymore. And I think that's partly because when you're that young, you have to make a lot of sacrifices, like naturally with everything, but it's kind of like you have a social life or you want to be an actor. And I wanted to go to parties and like be with my friends. And my mum was also an actress when she was younger. She's not anymore, and she hasn't been for a long time. But she said that, you know, when she was my age, she would give up everything to go and, you know, go to an audition. And I just wasn't like that after a while. But I think that I struggle. Well, struggle is a big word. I think that if it has a lasting effect on me, it's that I think I've probably been left with like a bit of a success complex. Because I think when you're 6 and everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to be a Hollywood superstar, and then you're not, you feel like you've let yourself down and let the expectations of other people down. Like, I'm fine, I'm okay. You know, we move, we're trying new things. But I think that that's what it came from. It's like not winning an Oscar at 15.
That kind of like self-acceptance and self-worth aspect to it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I think it's a really weird thing to work and have success in work as a child. And then I think it probably is like a psychological thing. But I definitely felt growing up when my work dried up and I wasn't in big movies anymore, that it was kind of like, oh, yeah, she kind of did that one thing. And I had that a couple of times from like casting directors. Not much, but there was definitely, there's a feeling that you have of like, you're not achieving enough because you've achieved so much already, you know. And being in like a film, like, yes, it's really exciting. It's actually not the biggest deal in the world, but it feels like it is when you're young. So then when you don't have that anymore, and also I think the other thing that I found really hard was that like letting it go. I couldn't do it for years, and I like wasn't that interested in it, but I'd be like, yeah, I'm an actress, but like I wasn't really that passionate about it anymore. But because it was such a huge part of my identity and what people knew me as, I found it really hard to commit to being like, I'm gonna put that on pause until I went to art school. And then I was like, I'm an artist, I'm not an actress anymore. So kind of it ebbs and flows, I guess.
And what's been the biggest thing you've learned from doing the podcast and all the people you've spoken to?
I think there's like two sides. I've learned so much about starting something on your own and how difficult it is, and how you really have to have like so much tenacity to just keep emailing people and keep reaching out to people. You cannot have any sort of ego. And I knew that already. I think like those are lessons I learned through acting. You know, there's so much rejection. There are hundreds of jobs that I went for that I never got. So I think I've always been quite good at being really persistent if I believe in something. And I also just think like on the other side of it, like, you know, what I'm learning from speaking to other people is just like how different all of our experiences are. We can all go through something that's like seemingly quite similar and be left with all of these different lessons and interpretations and feelings. And I think there's so much that we can all learn from each other, you know, even if you think someone's, or like, you know, somebody said to me once, like, oh, how are people going to relate to your show if they aren't a child actor, you know? And I said, well, I don't think that that's the point. I think that it's more of a kind of like, I don't think you have to have that experience to understand the show. I think that there are things that can be taken from it for everybody. I mean, I would hope so anyway.
Yeah, it's that like that everyone has their own journey to like self-acceptance and self-love, and
yeah,
I guess just helping those people share theirs and share what they've been through.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. That's the goal.
Then what's you mentioned earlier about the branching out and having the podcast go to more areas. If you could have one aspiration for the podcast, what would it be?
It would be that. Like, that is my goal. I think it just stems from like my life experience, but I am just obsessed with analyzing like what makes us who we are. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, that is just your early experiences. I also did start a kind of sub-series which I called the Experience Edition, and I spoke to an amazing girl called Alima, and it's a different nature, but instead of it being people who started their careers as children, it's people who have had life-changing experiences as children. So Alima was she's a burn survivor, and she's got an incredible story. And you know, she had a really difficult accident when she was 12 that obviously completely changed her life, and we got to sit down and talk about it, and it was like probably just like one of the most impactful conversations I've ever had, like personally in my life. And I think that is something that I also really want to grow, because that's a lot of the content that I personally am really interested in, is kind of like, you know, I love like a deep podcast, and I love people like being vulnerable and sharing their stories, and like seeing what can be taken from that. Obviously mine and her life experiences are so different, but like just learning from her in that hour that we got to talk was just so inspirational. So that's another goal, is to kind of keep expanding on that side of things and talk to some other people who have had, you know, really important early experiences in their life, and see what we can share from that as well.
Spoke about your TikTok account that you started during the pandemic.
Yeah.
How's that impacted on your life? Because I know that in recent like weeks and months, it's kind of grown quite quickly.
Yeah, it's so fun. You know, I literally just like posted a video. I didn't think anything of it, and then I posted a couple more, and you know, it kept picking up, and I think it's great. You know, so far I've had really nice reception on there. Some people have told me that I talk about being a child actress too much, but like I can deal with that. And for me, I think I love making videos on there, but I also really see it as a tool to try and get people to kind of come to YouTube and watch the bigger stuff that I'm doing, and the stuff that I put like all of my heart into, like from early is like my baby. So the more I can get people to come and watch it and engage with it, the better it is for me, you know, obviously, because it means that I can grow it more. But yeah, TikTok's a funny place. I think that like I'm still kind of like grappling with like what kind of content I want to make on there, because I think that I have learned through this experience that I have struggled a bit with like being behind the camera in front of the camera for the first time. I think it's probably because I'm not in a character, but I'm just being myself, and I think that's quite a vulnerable position to be in that I never really like thought of before. I think for some people, they don't think about it and they just vlog their day and they're not conscious, but I am quite like a sensitive, conscious, overthinking Virgo person. So I think I'm still trying to decide like what my avenue is with TikTok, and I'm trying to have a bit more of an openness to doing more things on there and like letting go a bit. I'm quite uptight when it comes to putting things out, so I'm trying to be better with that, but I love it. It's so fun.
What was your favorite film that you've been in, or TV series? What's been your highlight?
It would have to be Nanny McPhee. It was just like the best time of my whole life. It was so great. Like I had 14 weeks off school when I was in year 2. I was just making this crazy film. Obviously, like because it's a big movie, they have a big budget, and there was all these exciting things. We had like ice cream vans and juice trucks, and you know, it was always just like a party on set every day. It was just like an insane experience that I will never forget. And also, like, I think being on set with that many kids is really fun. Obviously, like, I was quite lucky. A few of the jobs I did had, or 2 of the biggest jobs I did had a lot of kids on. But when you're young, you're typically just with like a bunch of adults. So it's like actually not boring, but you know, you're the only kid around. So you've got no one to play with. But like, that job was just, yeah, like a real highlight, I think.
And do you think those friends and the people that you were on the film sets with have become lifelong friends? Like you mentioned, one of the lads from Tracey Beaker who you interviewed and stuff like that. Have they become part of your kind of like extended family?
I think it's really funny because I think like people have this. I can't speak for everybody. Like, you know, I imagine that there are people who shoot together when they're 5 and remain friends forever. But like, I think people forget how little you are. And when you're 6, like, I'm not texting, you know, people on my phone that I don't have when I'm a child. I think what's so special is that, especially with Nanny McPhee, we've been able to have like periods of, you know, people not talking, and then, you know, we pick it back up, and we have a WhatsApp group which was created quite recently. Unfortunately, one of the cast members passed away a few years ago, and Raphael Coleman, and we were invited to his memorial, and it was the first time a lot of us had seen each other in 15 years, and obviously it was a really, really sad reason to be brought together, but I think that allowed us to reconnect in a really special way, to remember him and honor him. But yeah, as a general rule, I think like it's so nice when you're able to kind of reach out. Like me seeing Dani Harmer after all of that time and being able to interview her was so special. But it's not like we're going for coffee once a month. Do you know what I mean? But the balance is really nice.
And if you could go back and speak to your younger self when you just started out in acting and you were in and out of all those films and those TV shows, what would you say to yourself as a piece of advice?
Relax, calm down. This isn't the rest of your life. This is just the beginning. You're going to do lots more things that you will never expect to do now. And I think just stop trying to plan the next 20 years. You're 10. I think would be my advice. That's definitely like a me personal thing. I think growing up, I was like not hard on myself, but very focused on like, really, I would like, you know, I'd come downstairs and I'd be crying to my mum, like, what happens if I don't win an Oscar? Calm down, you know, relax. It's fine. You're going to be 25 and still living at home. And that's okay. You know, we don't need to be so panicked. I think that would be my key thing, that like that moment is not forever and everything is subject to change and you're going to end up doing things that you would never expect to do. And that's also really exciting.
And I get the sense that this whole journey's been like a massive reflection for you and a learning to understand who you are. I liked what you said earlier, like your podcast isn't you pretending to be someone else, it's you being you. And I think that's such a valuable skill. And yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When sort of acting on it, it was that whisper in my head, which I've been struggling with throughout 3 years. But it was sort of start of October, I'd say, where it became took control. It became a scream rather than a whisper. And that was at the point where I stopped going out, or I'd stopped staying in the kitchen with my friends at uni because I just completely isolated myself away. And